but I was the fighter there. You know, I was like, you know, I was trying to win competitions. I didn't care about it being fights. I was trying to win competitions, but
because you submitted everybody. You used to finish everybody.
And winning wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to submit them. I wanted to finish them. I wanted them to be like, oh, please let me go.
Yeah.
Like I like that, you know, like the domination part of it. To just go out there and just, you know, like, doesn't matter. So there's some kid that's like this badass wrestler. He's looking at me like this little scrawny kid, little gangly 16-year-old kid, and I'm going to murder you. I'm going to choke you.
My name is John, and this is Please Allow Me. Today we got to talk to 27-time UFC veteran, winner of 15 UFC Performance of the Night bonuses, and one of the OGs of the constantly growing New England MMA scene. He's been fighting professionally since 2004. He's the co-owner of Lauzon MMA, and he's only had one sip of alcohol in his entire life. Please allow me to introduce Joe Lauzon. Joe, what's happening? First of all, fucking gym looks awesome.
Thank you.
We've come a long way in the New England MMA scene, from rooms with some folding gymnastics mats to real life cages and training centers, which is kind of what you got going on here.
Do you remember the Bridgewater gym?
I remember the Bridgewater gym.
It was so bad.
Yeah.
It was so bad. We were up on the second floor. I had to go up like this, the longest thing of stairs ever. It smelled like crap. We've come a long way. You're right.
How's your perspective changed since, well, first of all, what a lot of people don't know is I actually fought with you on your pro debut in 2004. Was that your pro debut, Dave Gilrain?
So Massachusetts was weird.
It was weird.
It was weird. So like at some point, the fights, nothing changed about the fights, but they went from amateur to pro. But on my record, yes, that was my first pro fight.
Yeah. And did you have actual amateur fights before that they called amateur fights?
I had 7 fights before that fight. So that was technically my 8th fight.
So that was my 3rd fight, and that was at where was that? Like the Avalon? Is that the House of Blues now?
I don't know what it is now, but it was definitely Avalon. Yeah. Pretty awesome.
Yeah, those were the good old days. So a lot's happened since then.
Yep.
And you went from kind of being like this teenage kid who people were talking about on like the limited internet forums at the time to now, how many UFC fights you got? 27?
20, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and how many bonuses you got?
A lot. 16, 17, I don't know. A lot.
That's a lot. It's a perspective shift. It's got to be from being a teenage kid doing that and kind of bouncing around and fighting. Would you go up to fight Ivan Menjivar in Canada one time?
Montreal.
And now you're kind of like the godfather figure in the New England MMA scene.
It's weird.
It's weird. How's your perspective changed, given that growth?
So I think it's a little bit strange because when I first started fighting, no one knew anything about anything, right? Like there was basically Team Elite, which is like Keith Raquel, Neri, Matt Lee, Mike Brown. You know, that was George Rivera. That was like the only like real guys that had like reputable guys whatsoever outside of New England.
Matt Sung Lee.
Dude, all those guys. So like they were like the real like super team of New England. And other than that, it was all a bunch of guys that were like, had like very little skill, which is basically just tough guys, brawler guys that would, fight at a bar, would go and, fight at an MMA show. And, as time's gone on now, it's changed dramatically, but it was kind of the blind leading the blind in the beginning.
That's how I remember it too.
Yeah. Whereas now I feel like now I've been there, I've done a lot of it, which is why I'm able to kind of, help out everyone else and kind of, hopefully they learn from my experiences, good and bad, but
I remember thinking, even though, so MMA happened when MMA happened, and we can't help the fact that you were 18 and I was 28 when it started happening. But I do remember thinking that we would be the first generation of guys who wound up teaching that actually had experience going through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because for me, my coaches were kind of piecing it together. No one knew anything about athletic commissions. Or any of that stuff. I remember I came in, and Letitia was still part of the athletic commission back then, like handing in medical records. I didn't know how to get an AIDS test. Who knew how to get an AIDS test back in 2001?
I don't know if you were there that night, but the first night I fought was at my first amateur fight was at I was in Taunton. I forget the name of the place. But
Matrix.
Was it the Matrix?
It was. A real shitty bar.
Yeah, okay. I think it was. So the Matrix in Taunton. And so like they were coming from a boxing background, Letitia and all these other people, like they're coming from a boxing background, right?
Right.
And so in boxing, amateurs, they have to wear t-shirts or some kind of tank top, and pros are not allowed to wear t-shirts.
Right.
So they come in, like they're puffing their chest up, like, okay, all amateur fighters must wear t-shirts, and then Matt Santos, I think, is like, hey, so if we have to wear t-shirts, can we choke them with t-shirts? She's like, what do you mean choke someone with a t-shirt? He's like, we come from jiu-jitsu backgrounds. Like, we can do chokes. And she's like, immediately like went from like, oh, everyone has to wear a t-shirt by the book to, all right, nobody is allowed to wear t-shirts.
Do you remember like back in the Naga days, there was you could choke people with their t-shirts in Nogi and Naga.
Yep.
And so then people started to like snip
they would cut the t-shirt.
Yeah, they would cut it so that it would just rip off.
Yep.
And then we would learn like from closed guard, you'd reach down and roll the shirt up. So you basically make a rope with the seam of the shirt and choke people out.
Dude, I think it was Tiger Showman. They would have all their kids do gis in like sleeveless gis or short sleeve gis.
That's badass.
So there was no regulation. Like, now it's like, okay, there's requirements. But back then I was like, oh, you wear a gi, you don't wear a gi.
I remember like my first Naga was actually, before it was Naga, it was NEGA. It was the New England Grappling Association.
Yep, I remember that. Yep.
And it was like their third ever event. And there were just 3 weight classes. It was like small guys, middle guys, and heavy guys.
Yep.
And no one gave a fuck what you wore in either division. It was kind of like the Wild West. And when I tell my guys about that now, it's almost like they're in disbelief when they hear that stuff.
People don't believe some of the things. Like I fought down in Florida. And I warmed up in a fucking like storage locker. Yeah. It was literally outside. Like it was like, middle of the summer, hot as balls out. I warmed up in a storage locker.
I remember my first fight was at the Matrix, and I remember they like switched the opponent on me minutes before the fight because that's just what happened back then. And you couldn't say no. Yep. Because you're there.
My first amateur fight, that's what happened. I fought main event.
Because we were there to fight. Not to win an athletic competition.
Exactly. Yep.
And I remember that we warmed up in a room and there were literal 2x4s with nails and rusty screws sticking up. And they're like, hey guys, watch the renovations over here. And I'm just like, I don't even know how to warm up.
Did you ever fight at Club Lido in Revere?
I never fought Club Lido.
Okay, so the way Lido was it was a dance club, right? So like there was like one part where they would have the fights, and there was like a bar. So we would have like basically the bar area to warm up earlier in the night. But then once it got to be like 8, 9 o'clock, they started opening the bar. Yeah. They would start like kind of like kicking us out. So we'd be like sitting there hitting mitts and grappling a little. You couldn't really grapple, but wrestling a little bit. And then there'd be people coming in and like giving us dirty looks, like, nudging us with elbows as they're getting their shots. And it was crazy.
That's how Royale was when we had a couple of guys fight at Royale in the theater district. And it was like that. You're literally warming up in like the little booths where people are getting ready to come in and drink. Yeah. It's insane. And that was, what year was the Gannon Kimbo fight?
I was in college. It was my sophomore year. So it must have been like 2003, 2004.
You were there, right?
Allegedly.
Yeah. Yeah. How did that take shape?
So
it was 2004.
The underground was like the king of underground street fights and all that sort of stuff and mixed martial arts. And no one really cared about it, right? It was Sherdog and the underground. And so Kimbo Slice someone was posting all his fights all the time, and then Sean Gannon was a Boston cop saying he wanted to fight him, and like started basically mouthing off. Someone from Kimbo's crew, his brother or someone, like posted like, "Oh, let's make this happen." So they flew up to an undisclosed location.
Yeah.
You weren't there for that?
No, somehow I missed that. I remember like
it came together quick.
Yeah.
It was literally like 1 o'clock, and I got a call like, you want to go watch Gannon and Kimbo fight? We're leaving right now.
You strike me as the type of kid that has a secret video of that or something.
I do have a secret video of that. I don't know where the camera is though, but I did have my own.
Do you really not?
I really have no idea. I had my own angle because I went to Wentworth. So I drove to the secret location, Rhode Island, and the fight happened. I had an angle of it. You can see it on all the ones that are public.
Right.
You can see me sitting there holding my camera. Yeah. See my big ears, and then so I get back there to Wentworth, and I'm telling all I was living in like a suite, so I know it was my suite my sophomore year, and I'm telling all these guys about this thing. So I put on my computer, and they're in like disbelief that this is where I came from because they know that I fight and I do MMA, but now it's like, okay, I'm bringing like this brawl of
now
these guys slugging it out barefisted. So it's crazy. And then the next morning I wake up, and then it's the buzz around the school because it's a picture of Gannon with his face all effed up and just blood everywhere, and it's like the front page of the Herald.
As you understand the rules that they set forth for that fight, because people dispute it now. Because in hindsight, you lose a lot of details. Who really, based on their rules, Who won that fight?
100% Gannon. Like you can't, there's no dispute at all. So there were very limited rules on what was allowed.
Right.
But one of the things it said was like, you weren't supposed to, there was no grappling or whatever. Right.
Right.
But Kimbo shot a takedown.
Right. He was exhausted.
Yeah. And Gannon really wasn't choking him. It's
right.
like, when someone shoots on you, you end up in like a front lock position. Yeah. You're on the neck.
Right.
But he wasn't choking him.
Chin strap.
And then, chin strap. And then, so then now Kimbo's guys all want to jump in and interfere.
Yeah.
And then, now Gannon's like, oh, I guess I could choke him here a little bit. And then he gave it a little extra squeeze, but it was never a choke. It was, he was sprawling on him.
Yeah. The videos that surfaced from that were awesome. And I think that nowadays as Kimbo kind of like had a more recent career than Gannon did in the UFC, I think people kind of forget about that. And that was at the height of the UG, which for people who don't know what the UG is, it was a forum on MMA.tv, which is now mixed martial arts.
Submissionfighting.com before that.
Submissionfighting.com, yeah. And there was a time where you could log on to that and you could have a conversation. I could talk to you. I could talk to Tito Ortiz. I could talk to any number of like up and coming
Dana White,
Joe Rogan. Yeah, everyone was on there.
Yeah.
What happened to that place?
I think that they kind of it's kind of a hard thing to kind of like foster and nurture a little bit, right? It's like because you get all these assholes, really, right? It's like the assholes and all these trolls that are constantly. Now you have direct access to people that brings in more people, and just you can't maintain the chaos.
Yeah, I mean there were some good conversations on there.
They still have a really good Facebook where they post all kinds of like awesome like street fight videos.
Oh,
and, like,
really?
Their Facebook presence is really, really good. They have like a few, like maybe 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 million people on
really?
Facebook. Yeah, they have a huge Facebook.
Oh,
yeah.
Who even knew? I got to get on that.
Yeah.
When you were coming up and MMA was a new sport, there are a lot of things that I know that when I was fighting, I really enjoyed outside the cage.
Mm-hmm.
I loved a good after party. I loved some ring girls that possibly had daddy issues. I loved all that stuff. You seem to have never gotten caught up in any of that. How did you do it?
So I never drank. Never. In my entire life. I've had one sip of one thing one time because I was pressured. The shady strip club down in Connecticut, New Jersey, somewhere.
Yeah, that's where shit happens. Yeah, shady strip clubs.
Goes like, drink this. I'm like, no, don't drink. She's like, drink it. I'm like, okay, took a sip of it. Pretty sure it didn't have alcohol in it anyways. But no, but I just never drank. So like, I would go to, for everyone's going to after parties, whatever.
Right.
Oh, let's go find burgers somewhere. Like, let's go find pizza. Let's go, I would get out of, or I would, because some promoters weren't so good, I would make a mad dash to the ATM to deposit my check.
Yeah.
Because, like the first, half the checks are going to clear. The second half are not. So I would make sure I was going to get my money.
That was always interesting. They'd pay you. You'd have to open the envelope. First, is this the amount that we agreed upon?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The second, is this check going to clear?
Yeah.
Yeah. Bruce Marshall was notorious for not having checks clear.
I knew right where the ATM was, right in Alito. In 20 minutes, it was in my account.
So in retrospect, now that MMA is a mainstream sport, people think of it like almost regionally, like which fighters come from which areas. And I think that especially in New England, when people say New England MMA, they're always going to think Joe Lauzon, no question about it.
Yep.
But people forget that a couple years older than you, Kenny had a really good run too. Kenny Florian, who's also from this area. He's gone on to do other things. You're still fighting. So they associate you, I think, a little bit more intrinsically with the MMA scene. But you actually fought Kenny back in the day.
Yep.
Was there any sort of extracurricular or maybe like extra motivation in that fight for you to say, okay, we're the two big guns from New England in terms of MMA. One of us is going to come out and the other one is going to look like they got beat up.
So Kenny had a bunch of advantages on me, right? So he had more fights in the UFC. He was a little bit older. Like I was like 22 or something, 23. Like I was young. He was older than me. So he had more man muscle. Not that either one of us are hulking either way, but really good jiu-jitsu, black belt in jiu-jitsu. I was like a white belt. Right. And so like when they first offered the fight, I'm like, why? This fight makes no sense. Why would I like? He's in my backyard. Why do we have to fight each other? There's so many other people we could possibly fight. But nope, that was what they wanted, right? So like, so it was definitely like a little bit of extra motivation. Didn't help, but there's definitely a little motivation because now I'm the shitty guy from New England, right? It's like I lost to Kenny, like which sucks. But I think that people think about me more so when they're talking about New England, just because I didn't leave. Like Kenny, he's out in LA now. He's got a school out there. He kind of bounced around, did some other things. And I've been here. Like I'm still cornering guys. I'm still training guys. I'm still working with guys. Like every Saturday we're here at my gym, and all the guys in New England, they're always here, and we're always getting ready, and I'm helping them out, and so I think that's what kind of helps.
And you're a very level-headed guy as far as I know. And leading up to that fight, was there any extra motivation, any extra drama, any backstory to that fight? I know both you guys have brothers.
So you know, he's teeing this up for me.
I'm trying to tease it out of you.
So the big thing was that, like, I had said in an interview that, like, and I didn't mean it disrespectfully, right? But he was a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I was a white belt because I don't train Ghee. I never trained Ghee to that point. I'm a black belt now.
We're going to get to that.
But I never trained in the Ghee. So I was like, oh, like, and I said in an interview, and I wasn't even saying anything like bad. I'm like, well, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Technically, I'm a white belt in jiu-jitsu, but I want to see how my white belt compared to his black belt, right? And I didn't mean nothing about it. She's like, I don't train in the Ghee. Right. And they took some offense to that, right? And then they also took some offense. We made a video, right? So, like, it's a pretty, we thought it was going to be like a funny little buzzer video, like, kind of, and they took it really, really poorly. But basically, Kenny would walk down he'd walk down in his Gi with like a samurai hat, and he would carry a sword, right? Which would never fly now. You got to wear Reebok stuff. You can't have props. Like, it would never fly now. But that's what he used to do. And then he had this whole thing of like, I finish fights, right?
I do remember that.
He wasn't finishing that many fights at the time. Like, he had a couple of rear naked choke finishes.
Right.
But he wasn't finishing a ton of fights. It's not usually when you think of a guy that's like, oh, I finish fights. He'd be in someone that's like 100% finish rate or something like that, right? But he did not have that, right? So, like, we thought it was a little bit funny because at the time, I had finished 100% of my professional wins. I think I had like one fight now where I won by decision, but other than that, I finished every single professional fight I've had except for one. So, so it was a little bit weird to me. So, like, we just trying to be funny. We filmed a video. We got my brother. We're in Colorado for the fight. It's fight week. We're just bored. We're just stupid kids. We're bored. Sitting in a hotel room. Nothing to do. We put my brother.
Not drinking.
I put my brother in a bathrobe. Took a shade from a lamp. Put it on his head. And we didn't have a sword, but we had a hairdryer. So we made a video of Danny, like, walking down the hallway, like he's walking to the ring, and then coming in the room, like, I finished fights, and just like, it was short. It was like maybe like a 45-second video or something, right? And we were just bored, like trying to, have fun, like kill time in the hotel room. It was just whatever. And I guess they took some offense to that.
I remember also back in the day, like the Tap Out show was one of the first like real vehicles for up and coming fighters. And I remember, I think they did a show. Did they feature Danny on one of them?
So Kenny was sponsored by Tap Out. Mark Delagrati from Sayatong was sponsored by Tap Out. He had a good relationship with those guys. That's right. So they came in, and I think I was in Hawaii at the time. I was always training with BJ Penn. But so Tap Out contacts us. They want to do, they want to do an episode of my brother and say this stuff. And basically they took the opportunity to, like, basically, like, they badgered Danny into going up to Sayatong and train. Right. And, like, see, this is where you should be training. This is what a real gym does. You don't want to train like in Bridgewater. Like, they edited things super bad. Like, Joe Pulver, who's my coach, who's the best guy ever. Right. He was like, he was in frame, and he's like, hey, has anyone seen Danny? He really didn't know where Danny was, but Danny was like way behind him, like walking past. Right. Just like they went out of their way to make us look really, really bad. Right. So I got pissed about that too. So we called them on that. It was just stupid.
That was a time when, like, as MMA was growing, it seemed like people, you said you were out with BJ for a little while, guys who are from areas that are like perceived as smaller market areas, a lot of times people look for the new shiny toy, and then they go out to these big camps and they think, oh, well, this guy's having success and this is the camp he's at, so the coaching must be great, so that must be what I need. But you never did that. You always stayed around here outside of like a little trip out with BJ.
Yep. So I trained a good amount in Hawaii with BJ, right? Because basically he was my coach on The Ultimate Fighter, and then I did the show. I went back to work. I fought on the finale. I went back to work, and it was right when he started BJPenn.com. And he's like, call me. I was like, Joe, come out to Hawaii. Come out and train. And, like, who doesn't want to go out to Hawaii and train and have, like, this? You got, like, this, one of the lightweight goats of all time. Yep. And, now it's, okay, he's calling me out there every single day on his Facebook and his website and everything. So I had to go. Like, who wouldn't want to go do that? So, like, I quit my job. Went out there for, like, I was there more than I was not for like 6 months. Had an awesome time out there. Yep. Learned a ton about jiu-jitsu, learned a ton about training, kind of saw how he was doing things, and, took the parts that I liked, discarded the parts I didn't like. And it was awesome, but I never really went to one of those big gyms because, like, say like a gym like American Top Team, right? And some people have great results going to American Top Team, right? How many good coaches at American Top Team? A lot, for sure. There's a lot of guys, right? But how many fighters are there? They must have over 100 fighters, professional fighters in the UFC on the roster. Right. They probably have like a third of the roster. It's like they don't have that proportionate amount of coaches that are there. So it's okay. So you go to American Top Team. What's going to happen? You're going to be the sparring fodder for their better guys. Yep. You're not going to get the one-on-one attention. You're going to be kind of grouped in. I think in the very beginning it made a little bit more sense because, like, if you're in New England, there was no one to possibly train with. But I was of the mindset of, like, well, I'm going to I'm going to build my own team here. You know, like I saw BJ do it in Hawaii, get a lot of good training partners there. And a lot of them were his guys. I've been training with for a long time. I'm like, I'm going to do my very best, the best of my ability to try and build up all these guys in New England. And I'm not going to have to go to this other place. Right. I'm going to build it at home.
And so you never viewed those big camps as having superior coaching?
No.
It's mostly about sparring partners.
It's good for sparring partners. And some of those have great coaches. You might have the best coaches, right? But like, how much of their time are you going to get?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I think Steve Mays is a great coach, you know, and I have 100% of Steve Mays' time. You know, maybe there's someone that's like maybe a little bit better than Steve Mays, but now I get 5% of his time. Like, how is that even? It's not even comparable.
Right. So you'd rather not have a diluted superior product, even if it is a little.
And I still
superior.
think, and I think, you know, I think it doesn't matter whether you're here or you're in Florida or whatever. Everyone's doing the same thing.
Right.
Like there's enough. It's so easy to, you know, send a video or send a text or call or something like that to just kind of explain what's going on. Training partners, I think, are they matter a little bit more.
Yeah.
Which is why everyone comes here on Saturdays. It's not like I'm not saying I'm the best about teaching everyone, right? But I got the best room.
Well, I also think that there's a part of the equation when you're learning martial arts from someone that people forget about, and they always want to look to the instructor, but a student never wants to take any accountability, right? There's an amount of material that's presented to you in a way that, you know, hopefully you're able to digest it, but you got to still work to digest it. Like just showing up and like staring at the wall and waiting for live goes is not the way to.
I can't tell the number of guys that have like, they show up and then they half-ass it, or they're taking every round off, or they're doing whatever, or like people come to like a grappling class and they're scrolling Instagram on the side of the mat and they're not like, oh, I was there for grappling. Motherfucker, you were physically here, but you didn't do anything. You didn't work on anything. Like you have to like, I'm also a big fan of like when things go right, it's my coaches. When things go wrong, it's me.
Totally.
I think that is like the one of the biggest things, you know, you can have, you know, one of the best mindsets, because so many people are like so quick to be like, oh, well, this guy didn't do this to me, and this guy didn't do this to me, and this guy, take some responsibility. Do it yourself.
I'm not scrolling Instagram. I just have my notes here.
It's okay. It's all good.
We don't even allow people to have their phones in the training area at my gym.
So I don't care, because I think everyone's going to, you know, get out of it what they put into it. If they want to come here and they want to scroll Instagram, that's fine. But I promise you, I'm not giving you any extra time.
But sometimes people need a nudge. Like there maybe, and I agree with you for the most part. If you're someone who just wants to come into the gym and be on Instagram, then that's just going to be your fate. You're going to be one of these guys who never gets better. But someone might need to be told, put the phone down and concentrate here. Like as a student, you have a job to do also. And I think there is a small number of those people who need a little bit extra motivation. And then once you get them in the system and you get them moving, they understand how it works. But without a doubt, there are tons of students that come in and they think just showing up and going to a jiu-jitsu class is a silver bullet for all of their physical problems.
Yeah, and it's definitely not a silver bullet, you know, but I don't mind like Instagram. Like we have like, so like Connor Matthews is here. He's one of our better guys, right? Very, very good fighter. Will very likely get to the UFC very soon. You know, he's got a good Instagram game. Like he does all kinds of stuff. Like I don't mind if he's there, if he puts in the work, but then he's also doing Instagram. That doesn't bother me at all. What I don't like is the guy that doesn't put in the work, right? And if the guy doesn't put in the work, that's fine. You go on Instagram all you want. I don't give two shits because I'm not going to give you any extra time.
To me, it's a guy like, so if you get one guy like Connor Matthews who does the Instagram shit and puts in the work, you might get 10 people who do the Instagram shit and then don't put in the work and then say, hey, Connor's doing it. I can do it too.
You're going to get smashed by Connor.
They're going to get smashed by Connor.
You can do it. You know, like there's a time and place. If they want to be a paying member and they want to pay to come here and sit here and scroll Instagram, that's fine. You know, I think the guys that get best, the guys that like, they get there early, they want to stay after class, they're asking questions. Like, I think those guys are getting the best bang for their buck. They want to show up and not take advantage of the environment. That's okay. That doesn't bother me.
Do you think that without social media, gyms like this would have a harder time existing as a viable revenue stream for the gym owners? Because I really believe, and I say this all the time probably to my own detriment, I'll bet you 2/3 of my members at my gym go only so that they can post that they go to the gym on Instagram. They might,
you know, like, so one of our big things for the gym. So everyone does like, they market things differently, right? They figure out what they're going to spend money on. Like I don't run any Facebook ads. I know you run Facebook ads, you do Google and stuff like that. Like we don't do any of that. Right. And I think that we're an exception, right? Cause obviously like I have a really good name. So that helps, you know, people looking for us. But I have like an awesome team that they take photos from me every single week. And we post photos. So like we'll get like 200 photos. They'll come for like 2 hours. They'll get like 200 or 300 photos. We just watermark them all. We upload them all to our Facebook groups. And then everyone wants to see photos of them training, right? It's like, you know, they're, you know, it's kickboxing or grappling or jiu-jitsu or something like that. Like we get good photos of everyone. They just go and they save the photos. They go and they post on their own Instagram, their own Facebook. And then, you know, it's like, it's the best. It's like, I'm not paying for ads. I would rather pay to have content created of my guys. And they want to tell their friends about what they do.
Yeah. And when, like in the city where I am, I mean, we're in very different geographical locations. I know that in some cities, like I've been out, like before the pandemic hit, if you go to Chicago, there are jiu-jitsu gyms that basically serve as kind of like a spin studio for guys. Like they go in at 5 o'clock, they do their 1 hour class and they leave. And there's no community-based interaction. There's no idea that I'm undertaking an endeavor that I want to improve at. And it really kind of epitomizes the idea that, in my opinion, to a degree, martial arts, specifically jiu-jitsu and the arts that we kind of came up with, it's no longer an endeavor that people pursue. It's a service that they consume.
Yep.
And I think that there are two different ways to approach learning, and therefore we have to change our approach to teaching people like that. Do you have a difficult time, because I know I do, reconciling when you get a room full of 40 or 50 students of varying physical and mental attributes and totally different goals, disseminating information to that same group, or do you just cut everybody into their own classes?
So I try to, when I'm teaching to a class, I try to teach to like the lowest common denominator, right? So it's like I want to give good basics, and I'm talking generally about like they're here for grappling. They're doing like a grappling class, right? So I aim it at grappling, right? And so that's what I do, right? And obviously, like, you could break down any move into like 30 pieces, right? Like, it's like, okay, so you're not going to teach 30 pieces when you teach it though. Like, you're going to give them like 15 or 12 or something like that, right? And then as you make your way around the room, you start filling in those gaps more, right? Because this person needs this, this person needs this. And then, so at that point, that's when I have to make adjustments on my classes, right? So it goes from like, okay, I give everyone kind of like the boilerplate, kind of like, this is an arm lock from guard. And then I get around to Connor Matthews. I'm like, okay, when we're doing MMA, this is how I hook the glove. This is how I slap him in the ear. This is how I do this. And kind of like, we kind of like, you know, flush it out from there, you know, but I don't have trouble though with a different group. You know what I mean? Like, I try to just teach to everyone. It used to be, we were talking about this the other day. It used to be like, you know, our guys that have been out for a long time, they're really good. One, because they've been training for so long, but two, it's because they were really freaking tough to start with. If they weren't, they wouldn't have stuck around. You know, it used to just be like, you know, oh, you know, you're, you know, go in the deep end. Hopefully you survive. See you in 6 months. If you're here for 6 months, you'll be really, really good. If you're not here in 6 months, because you washed out and you weren't going to cut it. Whereas now it's like, it's a little bit more like, you got to balance that. You got to balance it, right? Because you're running a business. You know what I mean? It does me no good to have, you know, like, oh, I have 100 guys, I have 100 students, but they're all badasses. Right. Versus, okay, now I have 300 students and they're not all badasses, but I have 300 paying members now. So you got to kind of find that balance. Your landlord doesn't care that your students are badasses. You know what I mean? Like, and it's never a case of like, oh, like I'm just going to, cater to, them so they're cream puffs. They're not. Like, I try to make everything hurt. Like, I try to make everything, I want them miserable. Like, it's like, oh, first day, okay, I'm going to teach you a 10-finger guillotine. You know, like it's, they get it, but we're a little bit more controlled with how we kind of structure things. Yeah. I can remember like coming up in our gym we had like 6 guys at first, and like all 6 of them were tough. Without a doubt. And then what happened was another gym opened, and then 3 of our tough guys went to that gym, and then kind of like 5 softer guys came into the existing gym. And so they kind of just get a little bit watered down. That's one of the things I have a problem with, especially when I teach, is understanding that not everybody wants to be coached. They want to be taught. And there's a huge difference between teaching someone something and coaching someone. To me too, it's also like, you got to find that balance, right? Like, am I trying to make you the best possible competitor I can? Or am I trying to entertain you? Or am I trying to just include you and kind of teach you so you have an understanding? Like, everyone's got different needs, so you can't, like, the way I've been training for a long time, right? It's very rare that someone gives me something like brand new that I haven't seen before. It happens sometimes, but it's pretty rare. But what I get better at is from like taking something that I kind of know already and repping the hell out of it. So I get like razor sharp with it. Whereas someone else, like, if they've never seen anything, they don't want to drill, this same move 1,000 times. They want to see like one thing 10 times and something else 10 times and this one 20 times and kind of like be entertained. So it's kind of it's a little bit of a balance, and it's an okay balance. It's not a bad thing. I started moving to, like, when I think about, even if you don't want to be a competitor, I think about in terms of teaching the best jiu-jitsu I can teach, the only real metric we have is, is it effective in competition? So I'm trying to teach high level, effective battle tested techniques in a way that most people could understand. So I'm kind of doing something similar to what you were saying. And I'm picking the 3 main things of a knee cut pass, and here they are. And it's kind of like, it can look fuzzy in the beginning to most people, and it will start to get dialed in, and the image and the shape of the move or the technique will become a little bit sharper as we add the techniques. But it was difficult because we have so many instructors. I'd say, okay, we're going to do a knee cut pass, and 4 people show it a different way. And a brand new student looks at it and says,
okay, I've seen 3 variations of this. Which is the right one and which are the 2 wrong ones? Yep. It's binary to them.
Yep.
So we're kind of dialing it in, and we're going to teach a fuzzier version, focusing on like the axioms that make that technique work. And then let the students who need help, like, oh, you're 205 pounds. Let me go see how JC does this over here. Oh, you're a smaller guy. We got a guy named Andres. Let's see how Andres does it over here. And we're going to try and like see how that works in terms of giving people enough clay that they can kind of shape and mold it in their own way and make it work for them at that point.
Yep, we do something similar. You know, so I tell everyone right off the bat, I'm like, look, you're part of like a big group class, right? There's 30 guys in here.
Right.
Right. I can't spend I could spend the entire class with just you, and you still wouldn't have it great by the end. You know what I mean? Like you'd have a much better idea, but I can't do that. The best thing you can do is rely on your training partners. So we do like a ranked rash guard system too, right?
Yeah.
So we have, usually you have Ghee, so you can tell by the belt, but in
Right.
no Ghee, you can't tell. You get everyone's in black shorts and in some kind of t-shirt, gym shirt. Yeah. You have no idea who's been here for 2 months and who's been here for 20 years.
Right.
So we came up with we just followed the jiu-jitsu ranking system, but we are rash guards, right? And not everyone wears them every single time, but most of them wear most of the classes. Right. And I just tell everyone, look, if you get caught in something, don't ask questions to the other white belts. You can ask them, but just take it with a grain of salt. Right. But anyone that's a blue, purple, brown, black, like you kind of have an idea for how long they've been around and how much to wait whatever they say. And anytime something happens and you don't know why it happened, either what mistake you made or what mistake they forced or the concept of why it works, like ask them. Like I got really good personally by anytime I got caught in something, like, oh, what could I do to stop that? Right. What did you do? What did you need? How do I break that? How do I make it so that sweep? You need this. How do I take something away?
Right. It's a give and take.
That's how I got good at jiu-jitsu. Like I drove Joe Pomfret crazy in the beginning because every time he taught something, I'm like, so why do you do this instead of this?
Yeah.
And he'd be like, just do it the way I said.
Sometimes an instructor doesn't have the answer.
100%. Sometimes they don't know. It's like that's the way they've done it. Like that's the version that they know and the way they've always done it. They've had good success. Yeah. So that's what they do. Sometimes like, oh, I don't know. It's just, you never know.
We sometimes I read this really cool article, and the idea is called, when you have a mixed level group, they say teaching to the edges. And basically it was based on the fact that at some point the US government was trying to find what's the ideal size for a cockpit and a fighter jet.
Yep.
And what they were saying was, let's take the average person and build a cockpit for that person. And what they found was absolutely no one is average sized.
Right.
And so no one could fit into the average size. And so from there, they extrapolated on this idea that they should make a small one and a large one, and then most people could fit into one of the two.
Yep.
And so sometimes when I teach, they call it teaching to the edges. I'll stress some really basic things, and hopefully the guys on the low end of the experience level will get that. And then I'll highlight some of the other things and give something to the more advanced guys. And the people in the middle will gravitate ideally to whichever side
makes sense.
It makes sense. I have no idea if it fucking works or not.
I don't know. So we started doing, so obviously with all the COVID stuff, like it's been harder, we have to have, pods and all sort of stuff in cohorts. So I have a 10 o'clock group and I have an 11 o'clock group. Yeah. And it started out where it was like, okay, like all my 10 o'clock guys were my more basic guys and 11 o'clock were my more advanced guys. You know? And then we kind of like, you're not supposed to shift and jump cohorts. They don't want you like, oh, I'm cohort A on Monday and cohort B on Tuesday. Right. But we've adjusted them here and there to kind of make them fit. Right. And that seemed to work out better because my more basic guys, they're getting like really, really basic, get more time to repping. Right. My more advanced guys, we start with like 10 2-minute rounds of takedowns and we kind of go from there. Right. So it's like, and that's worked out better. So we're kind of teaching the edges too. I haven't heard that idea, but it definitely makes sense.
Yeah. When you do your cohorts, does a cohort of 8 or 10 people get the use of the mat exclusively, or do you run a group class and then the cohorts just work together within the group class?
So it's changed a little bit as time's gone on, so like initially it was like we had them like, completely separated. Now we've gotten a little bit less on it. Things have gotten much, much better. I thought that when we got an update the other day, I thought it was going to kind of, change things around. We still have the cohorts. So we've gotten a little bit more relaxed on it. But I know that like a lot of these other gyms, they're not doing anything they're supposed to do. So we're very closely sticking to, everything we're supposed to do. I'm not saying we're not doing everything 100%, but we're probably 95%. Yeah. But I know other gyms that are doing 0%. They're doing whatever they want.
Yeah, I know some gyms, I don't even think they know COVID exists.
Yeah, they're doing whatever. And then I've talked to all kinds of friends that have schools down in Florida, and they literally since April, so like almost a year now, the only thing they do is if you don't feel well, don't come to the gym that day. And they've had similar numbers as us as far as like people have had COVID. We've had, no one's gotten COVID in our gym, but a lot of people gotten it outside the gym. It's like, how is this? Yeah. How is this a problem? Like, why is this?
Yeah, I don't want to, we could go for hours on that topic, but I don't want to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
So the MMA gym business, because of the popularity of MMA, has totally changed over the last 20 years.
So different.
Wednesday 2 days ago was the anniversary of it's the 22nd year I've been training jiu-jitsu. It's the anniversary of the first time I walked into a gym. So
what kind of environment did you walk into?
I'll never forget my buddy who was going to the State Police Academy. So I had wrestled in high school and like really briefly in college. And then when I came home after
what's really briefly in college?
6 weeks.
Okay.
Six weeks on a D1 team getting pounded is valuable.
I didn't know you wrestled D1.
Well, I mean, I was on the team for 6 weeks.
Okay, it doesn't matter. You wrestled with D1 guys. Yeah, that's good.
And I'll never forget, like, coming from Connecticut, being in that room, and we were in North Carolina, and everybody's sitting there talking about their accolades, and I was like, yeah, man, I felt really good about, like, placing in states and doing all this other thing. I had no idea Connecticut was such a shitty wrestling state. And then there was a kid who was like, yeah, I qualified for states, and I was like, qualified, whatever, dude. And we got on the mat, state? Indiana, and I was like, wow, this guy's really strong and fast, and the ceiling looks different from down here. Yep. But I had walked in, we took my buddy's restaurant basement, we put wrestling mats in it, and there was a Bass Rutten 12 tape volume Footlock series.
Dominic?
No, this was my buddy Bun. This was before I met Dom.
Okay.
And so we'd go in the basement and we'd footlock each other.
Yep.
And then in 1999.
Don't do that.
Very safe. And we all knew how to wrestle, so we were like, oh, let's just start breaking each other's feet.
Yeah.
The restaurant flooded, so then we just go to the park, and we would wrestle in the park because we had nowhere else to wrestle.
Yep.
And now we're all covered in ringworm and all kinds of like avian bird bacteria and stuff like that.
Bird shit.
And then my buddy who was in the State Police Academy said, there's a jiu-jitsu school opening. And I think this was like 1999. And we went in, I had my wrestling shoes, and I took a look at the guy, Fabio, who became my teacher for several years, for like, 15 years, whatever it was. And he was like 6'1", and he weighed, I don't know, $165. I put my wrestling shoes on, I was like, fuck this guy. I shot in a double on him back in the day when my knees worked, and I picked him up, and I just remember thinking how light he was. And then I remember going, I'm going to kind of let him hit the mat easy. I didn't want to dump him on his head.
Yeah, trying to be nice.
Trying to be nice. And then I was in a triangle tapping because I was about to pass out before we hit the mat.
Yep.
And I just remember thinking to myself, this is the fucking jam.
I
got to do this stuff. And that's what I walked into. And we would do every August. There was no air conditioning. So August was Valley Tudo month because it was too hot for a Ghee.
Yeah.
And as opposed to now where we're trying to retain students in August, that was the month where they purged themselves of all the pussies.
Yeah.
So you couldn't make it through August. You were gone. There's
gone. Fresh start in September.
Yeah, fresh start in September. No one gave a shit about how many students do you have. It was, if you want to fight, you've got one choice. But now that they have so many choices, we have to do things a little bit differently. So now, I'm looking around your gym. Your gym's awesome. And it just looks so much different than the places we walked into to just fight back in the day. I think now, because MMA is so popular and we have these facilities, I think there are two groups of people now that walk into an MMA gym. I think there are athletes and I think there are fighters. And to me, there's a difference between someone who views this as a fight within a certain rule set that they want to win and an athlete who looks at it as a competition they need to win. I think there's a different mentality.
There is.
And what do you think it is?
I think it's the exact same thing. So I was never an athlete. Like I played baseball. I played like 1 year of football in like 7th grade, but I was never like a good athlite, by normal standards. Like I'm a pretty good athlete now because I've been lifting and everything for so long and competing, my entire adult life. But I was the fighter there. I was trying to win competitions. I didn't care about it being fights. I was trying to win competitions, but
because you submitted everybody, you used to finish everybody,
and winning wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to submit them. I wanted to finish them. I wanted them to be like, oh, please let me go.
Yeah.
Like I like that, like the domination part of it. To just go out there and just doesn't matter. So there's some kid that's like this badass wrestler. He's looking at me like this little scrawny kid, little gangly 16-year-old kid, and I'm gonna murder you. I'm gonna choke you. So I like that part of it, but yeah, I agree that it's different. You get guys that like, it doesn't matter. They're going to get a broken nose and they're going to come back the next day. And you get guys that are going to get a hangnail and he's going to take off 2 months.
Right. I remember like, even as a guy who like was primarily a grappler, I just remember using the grappling ability I had to get to a place where I could just punch you as many times when you're on your back. That was the best for me.
Get on top and beat them up.
I loved pounding people from the top position.
Yep, for sure. Like, but for me in the beginning, it was all about jiu-jitsu. Like I liked the idea of them trying to punch me well, I use my jiu-jitsu. Like I remember like one of my first fights, like I had no idea how to throw a punch. I'm throwing like with like a bent wrist, like slapping the guy basically, like make a fist. Like I'm freaking just hammer fisting him, open hand. So yeah, I mean it's definitely two different, you know, classes of people that pop in. And then some people that just have no intention of doing anything. Like, oh, I'm looking for, we get a lot of people that are, and I love them, that come on gym. They're really, really weird kids.
Right.
Really weird people. You know what I mean? It's just like, they've tried other things and they just haven't really.
There it is.
They haven't really formed any real relationships. They haven't like whatever. So they come in and like, oh, I'm going to go try this. You know, and they're like, we love the weird kids. Like I was one of the weird kids. Like I like that. Like I don't mind it. Like we get a lot of people that come in like that too. That just like, they're looking for the social aspect of it.
It's because I think there's a group of people that we have, like in any gym actually exists, that for whatever reason, maybe they couldn't make the team in high school or they didn't have the confidence to go out for the team in high school. Yep. And now there's like a social aspect and a community aspect, and they're also doing something athletic that they like to do.
Who doesn't want to strangle their friends? Right? Who doesn't want to strangle? If I haven't strangled you, we are not friends.
Yeah.
Straight up.
And so you were doing heel hooks and shit back in the day. Yes. I remember you were on footlocks way, way, way back in the day. Do you ever look at some of this stuff now and you look at it and kids are online and they come in, they're like, hey, Joe, did you see this? And you're like, yeah, I did that in 2010.
Yeah, all the time. All the time. Yeah. You know, but to me, it's like, so all those, there's a lot of these intricate setups and some of the things are like, they're good concepts, right? But for the most part, it's like, it's, I'm not gonna say it's easy to beat, but if you have good basics, that shit doesn't even happen. You know, if you're going against someone else and they don't like, so like jiu-jitsu, I think about jiu-jitsu, right? So like, if you're in a fight outside, right? Even if you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu, you're not doing anything super high level. You're getting on top, you're passing the guard, you're pinning them down, you're smashing them in the face, right? It's like you're doing all blue belt stuff. Like it's just, and I feel like with footlocks, it's kind of the same. Like if I just have good basics, I don't have to worry about all this other fancy stuff. Just ram the basics down their throat.
I think the problem with like these intricate positions that are out now, I think there are two problems. I think the first problem is if you and I are going to go train right now, and I know you're a footlock guy, and you put me into a position where you can enter footlocks, whether it's single leg X or the saddle or any of that stuff. When I watch my students train, it's almost like there's a concession on my part. Oh, Joe put me in single leg X. I guess we're playing the footlock game now. Yeah. And I'm playing the footlock game back with you. But if you're better than me at the footlock game, I'm going to lose every time. So why shouldn't I be spending my time, as you said, just not getting put in those positions? Like, you know, I pressure pass all the time. It's an old school thing. But guess what? It's very difficult to invert on someone who's pressure passing when you're doing that stuff.
A lot of the guys that have gotten good at footlocks too, they're not MMA guys. Why is that? Right? Because the second you commit both your hands to someone's ankle, you get punched in the face.
I have another theory.
Okay.
So I have a theory that the footlock guys are not MMA guys because pressure passing back in the day when jiu-jitsu was really intrinsically tied to fighting, if I took you down, there's a chance you'd try and stand back up. So I had to stop you from standing back up, and I had to watch your submission attempts with your legs, triangles and arm bars, and the up kicks. So I would stay in on pressure passes. So the evolution of all those inverted games and attacking the legs didn't have room to grow. Nowadays, because jiu-jitsu tournaments are huge and you have the opportunity to butt scoot and just pull guard, there's no threat that you're going to stand back up. And so because I don't have to pressure you to keep you from standing up, I now play outside passing game. I play more of a timing and speed game, which gives you the space to invert and get underneath me, and therefore those positions have started to flourish. That's my theory on it.
This is us getting old, is what this is.
Yeah.
Like back in my day, we walked through 12 feet of snow, uphill both ways. You know, like, but I do agree though. You know, like, so for me, it's like I'm a very, very good footlocker, right? I can footlock if we're gonna grapple with someone. Like I have a very good chance I can footlock pretty much anyone I grapple with, right? But I tried that when I fought. I got punched in the face a lot. Yeah. Right. So I'm like, oh, maybe this is not so good. You know, like, and then I tell my guys all the time, like some of my guys, like they're white belts or blue belts, right? They want to like become like footlock machines. I'm like, guys, you guys can't pass the guard. Or white belts. You can't pass the guard. I like the footlocks. I'm not saying I don't like the footlocks. I like the footlocks. But if I had to prioritize, oh, I'm going to teach you this, you know, this new John Danaher, the way he's sitting in the whatever, versus let's get an over underpass. Let's get a double underpass. Like or knee cut. You don't know what a knee cut is yet. Let's work on that first. Let's prioritize that.
I also feel like when I watch tournaments and stuff, I'll see people bypass a guillotine or an armbar on their way to try and make a leg attack. And it's like, you just went 100 miles to go 2 miles.
Yes.
And it's like, don't you want to, I would rather win ugly than lose pretty. And I feel like with the advent of so many instructionals now, that people would rather lose pretty than win ugly.
Well, there's definitely like an entertainment aspect to it, right? It's like, you know, it's like everyone that comes in, it's like, okay, like, you could teach the same jiu-jitsu that's been working for, 20 years, right? And like, there's definitely gonna be some things that have to be filled in for gaps, right? But like, people don't want to learn that. People are gonna go buy that instructional. They go, oh, he's doing a knee cut pass again. Like, yeah, it's fucking super effective.
Yeah.
Yes. You keep doing the knee cut pass. Find the guy with the best knee cut pass and buy his instructional.
Yeah.
Right. But no, they don't want to do that. They want to go and like get this thing on like, I love wrist locks, but go and buy this like instruction about like 8,000 wrist locks from a spot. It's like, well, okay, I understand that, but like, you always have like high percentage techniques and low percentage techniques, right? And I don't mind low percentage techniques. I don't mind them sometimes, but you have to put most of your time in on those high percentage techniques. So you're gonna,
it's Pareto. You just got to apply the Pareto principle to your training. That's what I think.
Yep, for sure.
I also think like when we look at a lot of the instructionals out there, I think simultaneously the instructional game is helping to grow aspects of jiu-jitsu, but I also think it's slowing a lot of it down. So when the footlocks are a great topic, right? If you want to go and you're like an okay blue belt and you say, I'm going to go online and learn these footlocks because maybe my instructor is not as well versed as he could be in the footlocks. And you go on to like any of these sites. Let's just say you got a Gordon Ryan, a John Danaher, a Craig Jones, and a Lackland footlock set. A lot of these kids get all 3 or all 4 of those, and they're different. And then they wind up kind of like having paralysis by analysis. And rather than being like, let me just immerse myself in one system and try and figure it out, they're looking at all of them. And some people might be able to make that work, but it's too much information for someone who's new.
I think too, people get caught up in like, they think they got better because, I got 3 taps this time. And a year ago, I only got 1.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. You hit a couple more submissions. Yeah. You got more taps. Doesn't mean you're any better. It means that like you focus on something that they're not paying attention to. Like I want my guys to get good at getting on top. I want them to be able to pass the guard. I want them to be able to hold someone down. Yeah. And I want them to be able to, pick their submission from top. Not have to just take some random thing that they're offered and they're, whatever. Like, I think the guys are like, I have like 5 or 6 guys right now that are like white belts, like approaching blue belts, right? And like they've learned a little bit, so now they're trying to get a footlock stuff. I'm like, you guys, you're killing yourselves. You're wasting so much time drilling all these things that there's such low percentage of like how often they're gonna happen. You guys can't even like, if you're much better, you can force those situations to happen and then you'll get those submissions. Yeah. But because you're just focusing on this one little part of it, you're never gonna be good enough to get that situation to happen.
Right.
We get a kid, one of our best guys, Kenny Levertare, right? Leg lock ninja. Yep. He's so fucking good. He goes to every tournament, submits every single person, heel hooks every single person, or footlocks them somehow, like every single match, going back years and years and years, right? But Kenny got really good at first. He also never leg locks from bottom. Right. He always leg locks from top. He sweeps people, and then he attempts to pass the guard, and as they defend, he catches the legs. Right. But he got so good at the sweeps first.
Right.
All my guys, they want to do privates with Kenny, and he teaches them what they want to learn, right? But they don't know they're not capable of getting the fight, getting the match to that position. Right. So they're never going to hit it.
My instructor used to always say, we'd come in and be like, hey, can you show me this technique? And he'd say, I'll show it to you if you can show me how to get there.
Yes, I like that.
If you can't show me how to get there, I'm not going to waste my time showing you that technique because you're never going to be able to pull it off.
Like I think in the beginning, people are like, when everyone's like learning something really, really basic, okay, you learn A, B, C, D. And then I think as you get a little bit better, you learn, okay, like A, then you skip B and you go right to C. Right. And you go right to E and you kind of jump back and forth. But I think once you get a little bit better, you start going the alphabet backwards. Right. And you have to understand how, like, almost every sequence is going to flow both directions. Right. You know what I mean?
For me also, like a lot of the DVD sets are so unbelievably specialized and there's so much dependency on, for a lot of these guys, not all of them, but on physical attributes. I can't move like Lackland. There's no way that's ever going to happen. So I prefer to find like the source material for a lot of these things. Like, in my opinion, the source material for all Danaher's leg lock stuff is the Scott Stone and Saddle DVDs from back in the day. Yep. It's formatted almost exactly like that in the 4 positions. And so for me, although it's a little bit antiquated and not nearly as sophisticated as what Danaher's put together, I'd rather watch that and then extrapolate for myself the points that are going to work for me and that I want to teach. I feel like when you get caught into a system and you go to train and I give you a systems-based problem, you're only going to be able to give me a systems-based answer unless you have a lot of experience where you can think outside the box. Like, I don't want to be in a position where if you're a Craig Jones leg lock guy where you present to me a problem and I can only solve it with the Craig Jones leg lock answers. Yep. I want to be able to apply different things. It's like, I want to be able to take one skill set to solve the problem presented by another skill set.
I'm a big fan of like concepts. So like I hate when someone teaches like, oh, here's this move, and you gotta go boom, 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 boom. Like it's like I prefer if you say, okay, we're gonna do this, and this is why we're doing this, and then we're gonna do this, and this is why we're doing this, and then it's gonna get to this point.
Right.
And if they do this, you go this way, and if they go this, they do this way. It kind of branches off. And to me, that is like so much more important to understand like why each thing was done instead of just being a parrot.
Right.
Like you don't actually know why you're doing things and what you're doing. You don't know when it's appropriate and when it's not.
See, I feel like when I teach also, concepts are important, but one of the only ways to get concepts across to newer people is through the use of techniques. So now it's like, okay, I can't make you understand this concept because you don't really know anything yet. So I got to show you this technique so you can understand this, the concept, and then we can further refine the techniques after you understand the concept.
To me, and like, I respectfully smash them. Right. I think it's like, I think it's important to understand, like, like anytime I have someone like asking like, oh, what about this? And what about this? I'm like, oh, let's try that. Yeah. And they just squish them like a bug. Yeah. I'm like, okay. And like, and I tell them, hey, what you did wasn't wrong. Right. Right. What you did was not wrong. It was an option. It wasn't wrong. Not necessarily.
That's inferior. What I like to tell my guys. It's not wrong. It's inferior.
Yeah. But it's like, but I have so much more experience, and I'm telling you from my experience, try it this way first. And then like I could pull off that option and you couldn't stop me. There's nothing you could do. But you don't have the experience yet to do that part. So like just trust me. Just do it the way I'm telling you for now. And then we'll talk about when that's good, when it's appropriate, and when it makes sense.
I always like to watch the guys who are like working on new moves before class, especially the highlight reel moves. And then I like to look at them when they're doing live goes. None of them even get close to those positions unless your partner is willing to enter that specific position with you. You're not going to get it. Instagram, I think, is taking us dangerously close to katas in jiu-jitsu. Yes. If you follow some of these guys who are putting together these elaborate chains of movement on a guy who's just standing still and doing nothing, there's maybe a slice of that you could attempt to get to in a live match, but you're not going to, it's like, no one's ever going to teach you to throw a 12-punch combination on somebody.
Never want it.
Because after the first three, they're either dead or gone or hitting you back.
Mostly gone.
Yeah. And so to be doing these like extensive videos on Instagram that everybody fucking loves, it's like, that's just a kata. There's no way on earth 99% of that happens in a real thing. And I think it's a really dangerous path we're going down because it's further diluting this great sport.
So we had one of my guys, again, one of my, is a new blue belt. Train my gym, and he tried to Imanari roll me the other day, right? And like he'd been talking about it, like trying to go for it on more people, whatever. So he tried to Imanari roll me, right? So I immediately sprawl on him, smash him, completely crush him. I immediately jump. Now I'm like, I'm not pissed, but I'm like, you just thought you were gonna Imanari roll me? Like everyone's sitting there watching, like
mildly insulted.
Mildly insulted. It's like I pass north south, I get him in a Kimura, and then I just start like, just digging my elbow in his ribs, right? And he's just like, I'm not even trying to get the Kimura. I'm just digging him. He's just suffering, just being mean jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And then one of the other new guys, one of my guys, Winston, is like telling me, he's like, don't square him, do this, do that. I'm like, so like I finished the Kimura. I'm like, Winston, come over here. And I put him in the position, same the north-south Kimura. I start digging my elbow in his ribs. Like he starts screaming like bloody murder. Like stop. I'm like, why don't you just be strong? Just don't square him. Don't
follow
move.
your own advice,
like,
Winston.
Yeah, he's like, I was just trying to help him out. I'm like, okay, but just I want you guys to understand like what just happened here. He knew a little bit, and he tried something that he was not ready for, and I smashed him for it. And then you thought that you were gonna help him out, and then now you just got it too.
It's like a classic example of knowing just enough to get your ass kicked.
100%. Little knowledge is dangerous.
Yeah. So.
And I love both those guys. Like they're awesome training partners.
Yeah.
Like, they're really good students, but it's like, sometimes it's like, okay, like take this time you're spending on these couple things and like, just ask advice. Hey, what should I be working on? Yeah. And I'll tell you, okay, work on this and this and this.
It's like, I always go back to the Pareto principle. I'm like, you're just spending an inordinate amount of time on positions and moves.
What is the Proto Principle again? I've read it. It's wicked familiar. But.
It's like the 80-20 principle. It's
Yep.
You should be spending 80% of your time on the 20% of the moves that are going to give you the results.
Yep.
So it's just allocation of resources. And guys are spending all this. It's like you said, like you come into the room and it's like everyone's inverting and doing all these things. And it's like, you should be practicing making frames and recovering a guard. Yep. Because otherwise none of this really matters. But the evolution of
depends on your
that's true.
Your environment. So like so Danny Savey's is who I got my black belt on, right? I've trained with Danny a bunch. Like, he teaches Ghee at my gym. Yep. So I have this argument with him, and I'd love to hear your take on it, right? Like, so if we're talking grappling, right, I want to stop you from passing my guard. Right. Right? If we're talking MMA, though, I would rather someone pass my guard into side control than to lock me down in half guard. So I prefer someone on top of me inside. He prefers someone in half guard or
in jiu-jitsu in a gi.
Yep.
I would much prefer that no one passes my guard.
Yep. And why though? Why?
Because I will, whatever guard I'm in on the bottom with a gi on, I will always have a measure of offense. And I can always work something where I can go from the bottom to the top and you're not punching me.
Yep.
Right?
Probably points is in there too, right? You don't want to give up points because if they pass your guard, they're going to get the points.
Right. But also like in a gi, if you're in half guard, for you to do any further damage to me, of course there are some submissions there. You've got to move your body to another position. Right. And I don't want that to happen. Yep. You don't need to in MMA. In MMA, if you're in half guard, you can do plenty of damage right there. Right. The thing for me is as a guy, so I'm going to probably agree with you and build on your point for MMA. I would make the argument, I'll argue with myself for a second. I would make the argument that if I passed your guard, I would never try and pass your guard in MMA. You and I, having trained with you, I would never do that. And the reason why is because I can't connect my hips to you 100% of the time there in MMA with those gloves being sweaty. And for me, I don't want you to turn away or cause a scramble. Now, other guys will answer, that's where you take the back. That's fine. Back taking is not my strength. So I don't want to get to a position, especially in MMA, where now I've got to waste the energy of wrapping my legs and using these gigantic muscles to control you to get the back.
Gigantic muscles.
Yeah. Really gigantic muscles. And now that's not the answer for everybody. But for me, I'd rather stay on top in MMA, in half guard, pounding you away, where every time you move, I have the ability to chase your hips with my hips.
Yep. So I think that, so the two things that I think that go against jiu-jitsu, sport jiu-jitsu versus for MMA, was I would much rather have someone be in side control. Mm-hmm. And then in half guard, if I'm on bottom, I always want an overhook instead of an underhook, right? So like, now, why do I like those? So for MMA, if I'm on half guard, I'm on bottom half guard, right? I always want to have the overhook because I can post out with my other hand, I can get on the hip, and now I can make some space, and then I can start attacking with butterfly guard stuff. Like I love butterfly guard. I think it's the best guard, period.
That's especially for that spot.
Yeah, 100%. So, but if I get an underhook, traditionally people like the underhook in half guard because they're going to start popping people up and whatever. And then as the guy on top, you're going to try to darce me. Or make me pay for getting there, and you're gonna pass, and you're gonna choke me, whatever, like that, But for MMA, it just gets that arm pinned. Like I get that underhook. If someone on top is decent at, they're gonna pin that arm, and now they're gonna hit me with knees. They're gonna punch me in the face. They're gonna get head control. Like there's a lot of things that they can do. For me, there's no better position for MMA than top of half guard.
Yeah.
Right. It says that you can't get your legs away. It's hard to get sweeps going, especially when you can't get that underhook. There's a lot of ways you can like frame on the face and kind of defeat their hips and slow them down and can punch them the entire time.
Yeah. I think of half guard, and I like use this little analogy when I coach my guys, that positioning in MMA has to be a trade-off. You've got to find the perfect balance between power and control. Yep. And in a position like half guard, to gain the most power with your strikes, you're going to give up a level of control because you're bringing your shoulders way back. You're cocking, you're making space to like land that big heavy blow. So you got to find a way to do the most damage while also having the most control there. Yep. And when you say sport jiu-jitsu, I actually think, so you got gi jiu-jitsu and no gi jiu-jitsu historically. Yep. Now you've got no gi jiu-jitsu and MMA jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
And I think further, we're dangerously close as the sport grows to having a gym
jiu-jitsu.
Gym jiu-jitsu.
Gym jiu-jitsu.
Which I think is like the guy who, like, if we're training and like you just don't care about winning and you kind of like just let someone get past your guard and go to side control. When is the last time in a high-level jiu-jitsu match at black belt, big tournaments, you ever saw a guard get past and someone hold you in side control?
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
And the fact that in the gym people let that happen, you're creating an illusion. That jiu-jitsu doesn't happen in high-level competition, but it will happen all over the place in the gym, even with really good guys. Mm-hmm. And so I think that the gym style of jiu-jitsu for non-competitors is going to further delineate itself. And you're just going to see all these different types of jiu-jitsu, which I think is great, and paths to go by.
I think part of it too is like, so like really good jiu-jitsu is very efficient, right? Which is why you have like some guys that are like horrible athletes, smoke a ton of cigarettes, like no cardio at all. They get winded going to the bathroom, right? But they have phenomenal jiu-jitsu, right? So because they were lazy, they got really good jiu-jitsu, right? But so as you get, I have the mindset of like, I will expend a lot of energy if it makes you expend more energy.
Right.
And I will just try to drain the life out of you. So I try to be very active and I try to force scrambles and I try to make you work really hard. And hopefully that I'm going to be in better shape. I'm going to I'm going to get tired, but you're going to get more tired. And then I'm going to take advantage. I'm going to get you. you know. But I tell guys like, be efficient, with your movement. But they take it as like, oh, I'm be lazy. And like, it's not really the
economical
thing. So it's like someone like Chris Palmquist, right? Love Chris. Awesome jiu-jitsu, right? Super fucking lazy. He would love to get, like, we have this argument all the time. Like, I like butterfly guard better. He likes half guard better, right? Because he's way lazier. He's going to get in that lockdown. He's going to lock on your leg, and he'll spend 20 minutes just shifting left and right a little bit, just being super patient. For me, that doesn't work. I'm getting ready. I'm always thinking MMA. Like, since I was 16 years old, I've always been thinking MMA. I have 5 minutes. If I take you down, maybe a minute in the round, I have 4 minutes to do damage, pass your guard, submit you, whatever it's going to be. I can't spend 20 minutes in half guard and just like sit there, like fumbling back and forth.
I always tell my guys, you got to train sport, but think street.
Yes.
Train sport, think street.
Yep.
Like, you want to be nice to your training partner, but is this applicable anywhere else other than this little made up world that we're in right now?
I tell my guys to be jerks to each other, but don't injure each other.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to be uncomfortable the entire time we roll. Like, if we roll, you're a lot bigger than me, right? I can't make you that uncomfortable, right? But if we're the same size, I'm going to do my absolute best to make you despise rolling with me every single time. Not because I'm like twisting your fingers and being a spaz and everything like that, but like constant head pressure, constant shoulder pressure, just squishing you down, making you miserable. To me, it's like that's the best compliment you can give to someone is to roll with them like that, right? Because like you did everything you could to make them miserable. And if we both do that to each other all the time, no one outside is going to do anything worse to us.
I agree with that. And as a guy who's getting like older and has a lot of injuries, I hate it when I sense that I think like one of my like big, strong students comes in. He's like, oh, maybe I should go easy on this guy because he's old and his knees are fucked up and all this other stuff. I actually am insulted by that. And I tell people all the time, don't treat me any differently.
Like I get a couple guys, my bigger guys, right? They're like 260, 280 pounds, right? They're freaking monsters, right? And I'm 175 pounds right now, right? I'll roll with them and I have no problem with them like, squishing me a little bit, right? But if they squish one of our other guys, it's like they have no business. You know what I mean? Like, I will murder them.
I find that like giving someone that level of responsibility is tough sometimes.
Yeah, it's hard.
Because like they're like, well, you said to do it X, Y, Z. It's like, yeah, that's a 120-pound girl on her third day.
Yeah, right. Yep. Gotta find that balance.
Why do you hate the Ghee?
We don't have enough time. We don't have time for this. So I don't hate the Ghee. I hate its effect. I think it's the most useless tool ever for fighting. Everyone always wants to say, I think there's a couple things that I like about the Ghee for getting ready for a fight, right? That's always been my perspective, right? It's always been fighting. I think it's good for posture because you're giving someone handles to grab onto your collar and posturing up is good. And it's good for keeping your feet at an appropriate distance where you keep your feet where they can't reach them. Right. I think those are the only two redeeming qualities about the Ghee whatsoever. I think that Don't cut me off yet.
I'm gonna let you finish.
So, for like every Ghee grip is useless. I hate the example. If someone's wearing a jacket, you can do this. You can do this Ghee choke. You can do this cross choke. Like bullshit. There's no way. There is no way that any jacket that you're gonna run into someone wearing outside is not gonna be perfectly zipped up and like that. You're never gonna Ghee choke someone. And if you are gonna Ghee choke them, you could have broken their arm without the jacket just as easy.
I agree 100% with that.
So,
I think.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. I can go for a long time with this. So.
Well, I'll jump in and we can
Okay.
let this end of its own volition.
Yep.
So the Ghee to me.
Yep.
For example, if I throw an arm bar up on a big, strong guy in no Ghee, there's a chance that he may just power out of it using, sweat and strength and explosiveness and everything else like that. And what's going to happen is, in the Ghee, it's much harder to use athleticism to escape techniques.
So you're saying that your arm locks are not good enough to catch someone outside of a Ghee?
No. What I'm saying is for someone who does not have the experience that I do, it would behoove them to have to learn as technically perfect of an armbar defense as they can, because at some point there will be someone as big and strong as them, and that person won't be able to just power out of there. So you'll need the technical escapes that you learn in the Ghee because it's a little bit slower and there's more friction when everyone's going to run into the guy who's bigger and stronger than them, and you will need to add the technique to that, and that becomes a force multiplier. That's my first point. My second point on self-defense is, while I'm not interested in using your coat to choke you, what I am interested in is understanding how to move if I'm wearing a coat, you're going to grab me. Like, I want to know how to move when someone's got certain grips on me, and they're not going to be technical grips, certainly, but I'm not going to be stifled by you grabbing me because I'm well versed in moving around when you're grabbing onto my clothes.
The day that I'm a black belt now, right? So I've been training a lot more Ghee now in the last couple of years. But before that, the day that I ran into some random guy on the street and his grip on my jacket gave me trouble is the day I should hang up the gloves and never fight again.
Well, the day that I'm walking down the street and an oiled up man in his underwear gives me any sort of problem, I'm probably hanging out in the wrong neighborhood.
I'm not advocating for wearing spats and all that stuff either.
Right.
I'm just saying I don't like the Ghee. You're going to the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm saying more realistic. You know what I mean? Like I think like shorts and a t-shirt are pretty realistic. You know, shorts, I mean, you can wear jeans if you want. If you want to wear sweaty ass jeans.
Yeah, you live in New England.
Yeah, you could. And then Kenny Levitaire, Leg Lock Ninja, he shows up and grapples in jeans all the time.
Have you ever done an experiment? I've seen this done somewhere where everyone comes in the clothes they wear to work for one night of training.
Kenny did that last 2 weeks ago.
Did he?
Yeah, 6 a.m. So we have 6 a.m. classes too. So Kenny's like, hey, everyone bring your jeans. Yeah. I might bring a fake knife, like a rubber knife.
I might bring a real knife.
Yeah, might be. You know, but like for me, it's like, okay, like the second you like, and I hate it when like guys are like Ghees have to be made so thick because they're gonna rip, right? Like clothes are gonna rip too.
That's not why they're made thick.
Why are they made thick?
The lapels are made really thick because just like when you add the fat grips to a bar, it's just much harder for the material to take form and start to like cut the blood supply off. Notice the thicker Ghees are harder to grab. They're harder to choke people with. Put a karate Ghee on and it's like a string around
I think it's more about durability though, right? It's like the karate Ghee would make it through like one class and it would shred.
Right.
You know, jiu-jitsu Ghees are going to last longer. I think that's kind of part of it, but.
You've never competed in a Ghee, right?
One time.
Okay. So part of the problem is with, with the Ghees is the weight of the Ghee. Yep. They haven't adjusted for the fact that Ghees are a lot lighter and a lot like more durable for the material now. Back when I started, I remember like my Ghee weighed like 8 pounds. Sorry, I just spit on you. My Ghee weighed like 8 pounds. And the weight classes in the IBJJF still reflect that Ghees are that heavy.
You weigh in wearing the Ghee.
You weigh in wearing the Ghee, mat side weigh-ins. So it's to the point now where when I compete in a Ghee, I compete at heavyweight. The limit with the Ghee on is 208. For me to do heavyweight no Ghee, I can't make that weight. I have to do super heavyweight no Ghee because they assume the Ghee is like 8 pounds. Yep. And it makes absolutely no sense the way they do that.
I feel like the Ghee is not realistic. I think that typically day to day, even in New England, what someone's wearing is closer to probably shorts and a t-shirt as opposed to a heavy jacket and a Ghee that you could choke someone with. You know, like all the grips are different. Like, and I hate seeing someone that like is like good in the Ghee, but their Ghee, their game largely revolves around grips on the Ghee. Right. So it's like, it's one thing if someone like, if they're good in the Ghee, but they have like a more realistic kind of approach. I hate it when guys are like, all they do is Ghee choke and set up like these loop chokes and things like that. It's like, that's not realistic. That's like, you're taking advantage of the fact that they're wearing Ghee, which is not always going to happen. Like I can, no Ghee, put me in a Ghee, put me in no Ghee, right? Like Danny Savior used to have fits in me about, because like, he's like, you're grappling, you have a Ghee on, but you're grappling like it's no Ghee, right? Because I'm like, I'm really good with my overhooks and underhooks. Yes, I'm going to use those. You know what I mean? Like, and for the sake of learning more about jiu-jitsu, I started focusing on more Ghee grips and things like that, right? But but I'd be going with guys that are really, really good, and I'm just using overhooks, underhooks. They're using their Ghee grips against me, and I'm still cutting through. I'm passing. I'm doing all this sort of stuff, and like, I just don't know how realistic it is. But if you put us at both in, so if I had a competitive role with someone, we're both in the Ghee, then that's fine, right? Like Ghee is their thing, and I'm still doing okay against them, right? Put us in no Ghee, and it's not even close, though.
I think that first of all, as far as the grips go, I always say if I'm not outside of the elaborate worm guards and all these other things, all that shit, if I can't translate a sleeve grip to a wrist grip or a lapel grip to a collar tie, I shouldn't be fighting anybody. Yep. If I can't say that these two things are analogous and just switching off, I shouldn't be fighting anybody. But outside of that, like the more elaborate guards, I agree with you. That stuff is totally unrealistic. You're never going to, like, you know, Carlson, every time he comes into the seminar at my gym, he's just, they talk about like, oh, pulling this guard and pulling that guard. And he's like, hey, look, you're in the bar and someone grabs your girlfriend's ass. You're not going to pull guard on them.
Pulling spider guard.
Yeah. You're not
and spider guard's like, that's fun to play, but it's a game. It's not realistic. Like I don't mind playing spider guard in the Ghee class. Right. But that has zero carryover to a fight.
I think that what you're describing, I think like I've always thought if you train in a Ghee, and you're good in a gi, you should be able to seamlessly transition to no gi. Whereas people who are good in no gi can't seamlessly transition to a gi. I've thought one way is an easier.
I came from like the no gi to the gi, so I kind of transitioned that way. And to me, in the beginning, the hardest part was thinking that, okay, I'm supposed to be grabbing the gi. So I would mindlessly grab the gi just because I thought that's what I was supposed to do.
Right.
And then once I just focused on my overhooks, underhooks better, I got more like, I was more familiar with the gi. And then I would figure out, okay, this is the time I'm going to grab the gi. This is the time I'm not going to. It just took me a little time to kind of get used to it. But I had no problem as long as I wasn't trying to like think, oh, I need to grab the gi because that's what I'm supposed to do. Right. As soon as I stopped doing that, I did so much better. Yeah.
I think that like it also could be a generational thing too, because like the jiu-jitsu that I play it's not heavy grip dependent except for a handful of chokes. It's all overhooks and underhooks, and it's just like grappling concepts that work without a gi and they work with a gi. It's as you whittle it down to the finer details that you see the differences between the gi and the no gi stuff. I remember, what was Manny's name? Manny, Ice Fights Manny.
Oh, Nevs.
Crazy Manny Nevs.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. Before Manny died, he was going to let me fight an MMA fight in Rhode Island in my gi.
Really?
I begged him. I was like, I want to fight an MMA fight in my gi.
Yeah, that would have been so unfair.
Why?
Because you would have got matched up against some bum kickboxer that didn't know what a gi choke was. Didn't know what an Ezekiel or any of that stuff was.
Where he could wear no gi.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, you would have just gotten on his back and you would have just collar choked him just so you could do it. Yeah, it would have been. It's like they're going to an MMA fight and like, oh, like, well, this guy doesn't know that I do knife fighting and I got a shank in my shorts.
Do you remember when Randy Rowe at a Naga, they had to pause the match because he had a knife in his little, what were the bad boy shorts? He had a knife hanging out right here, and they're like, okay, time. We got to get the knife out of this guy.
Randy Rowe.
Yeah, those were the days. The last thing I was going to say about.
But fuck the gi.
Well, okay, but not so much as a retention tool.
No, so I think it's okay for that because like it's offering a sport, right? It's like I'm giving you like, it's like, oh, we're playing soccer. Oh, we don't always have a soccer ball, so you got to just kick whatever. You got to pick whatever rock you can find. Like, no, I get it. I understand. I like it. And some people, like, they're looking for that. Like, they're looking for, I was never looking at like, oh, I want to become a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I want to do this. Like, I was like, hey, I want to fight. Started, I wanted to just do grappling, and until I was 18, that was what my only goal was. I always wanted to learn submissions and whatever. And then I started fighting, and then that was my focus. So I was always like, okay, like, how do I get better? And I don't think training in the gi helps at all for, getting better for a fight. Like if I think for some people, it's a little bit easier to kind of wrap their head around concepts and techniques in the gi. And I think that part's okay of it. But overall, I think it's mostly garbage for getting ready for MMA or getting ready for a fight. I think you're wasting your time. There's always like, just like there's drilling certain techniques, and there's other techniques, and it's not a complete waste of time. It's just very inefficient. Right.
I think there are lessons in the gi more so than techniques in the gi. Like you talked about earlier, like to me, the biggest thing is the posture.
Yep.
And also another thing that I think about is when let's say I'm in your closed guard and we're wearing the gi and you start to grab my sleeves, I've got to break those grips as soon as possible. The same goes for if I'm sitting in your guard in MMA and you start to control my wrists. I can't punch you if I don't have control of my own wrists. So there are ideas and concepts, I think, that are taught in the gi that are translatable.
So from there, though, it's different. Like in MMA, I'm not supposed to stick my fingers inside your glove and grab on.
But that happens.
It happens sometimes. Right. I strongly advocate to play in that gray area.
Yeah.
But it happens sometimes for sure. But like it's completely different. I think you're way better off if you're talking about that. You talk about hand fighting for no gi. Like you're acting like hand fighting is controlling the sleeve in the gi has carryover to MMA, and I guess I can see how it does to some extent, but a lot less, carryover compared to no gi.
I just don't feel like I feel like in no gi, and if you talk about that classic top and bottom closed guard position, I feel like so few people in no gi will instantly go to hand fight because they'll reach up for your head or your elbow, which is a bit of a different thing because they don't have the gi grips. But
I think it's more effective. I think if we're talking no gi, right? So my guard passing was good once I stopped doing all the footlock stuff, right? My guard passing got way better when I stopped trying to footlock people so much. But my opening the guard was probably like the hardest part for me about putting on the gi, because like I'm used to getting in their guard and can opening them, right? Because I know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna can opener them, right? What's gonna happen? They're gonna switch the arm lock, right? Well, guess what? They just open up their guard. Right. Now I force half guard and I punch them in the face for the next 15 minutes.
What if you get arm locked?
What?
What if you got arm locked?
If I set a trap and I get caught with that trap, I'm an idiot.
Yeah, but that's a dangerous game to play.
No,
like I'm gonna can opener you and hope that I don't get arm locked.
Hey, go stand on that parking lot. I'm gonna go get my car. I'm gonna go run you over. If you're sitting in that spot, you deserve to get hit in the car.
See, when someone tries a can opener me, I salivate. I'm like, thank you. You just hooked it up because I'm going to make a cross collar grip and I'm just going to shift my hips. I'm going to have a blast with that.
See, for me, it's like anytime if I'm in someone's guard, can opener is one of the first things I'm going to go for.
Yeah. Can opener, and I'll let you finish. Sorry. It sucks so bad that the IBJJF made the can opener illegal in a gi. That's the stupidest rule ever.
Yeah. So like for me, it's like, okay, I'm going to grab, if I'm in your closed guard, I'm going to punch you a couple times. I'm going to grab a can opener. Right. I know exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to can opener you. Either you're going to block it with your arm, reach across and just nullify it, which case it doesn't cost me anything because you didn't go for that arm lock, or you're going to go for that arm lock. I'm ready. The second you rotate your hips, I'm ready to withdraw my arm. I'm ready to force half. I'm going to pass your guard. If I'm doing a move that I know, okay, this is the counter, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know he was going to arm lock me when I went for that can opener. I'm an idiot.
Yeah, but that you could say that for almost any sequence in jiu-jitsu. Anytime you start to do something, there's going to be a counter that your opponent can play.
But for the can opener in particular, it's one very clear thing. What can you do? You open your guard, put your hands on the mat, and scoot away.
Right.
You reach your forearm across, block your tricep, block with your head, or you arm lock. There's only 3 things you're ever going to do, right? And none of them are bad. Obviously, if you get caught in the arm lock, that's the only one you're going to be worried about, though. They scoot their hips away, that's fine. Knee cut, pass them. Yeah. If they block, well, nothing bad happens. Maybe you don't get the can opener. It's not very effective, but like, nothing bad happens. Only thing you got to worry about is the arm lock. To me, jiu-jitsu, the great thing about it is the fact that as I threaten this thing over here to the right, you defend that, I bring you to the left. Right. And vice versa. It's like you got to find like that balance of like, oh, I attack with this and it exposes you to this, or you go to here. For that, it's a very straight, oh, I'm going to go here. You're going to do this. Yeah. Give me that out.
I think that all those permutations of every like offensive maneuver, that's a lot of times what confuses people in jiu-jitsu. And like we started to actually teach less technique. We want to teach the core techniques, like to go down these like potential chains of events that may or may not happen. If you get a student, this one, what if this? Well, if we start playing the what if game, we'll be here for a week.
Yeah, right.
We can literally be here for a week. Yep. And I like Ryan Hall's take on a lot of stuff where he's just like, sometimes the answer is just get good at a single and come up on a single. We don't need all these other things. And with all the details and all the styles and everything, I think it really clouds people's ability to progress. If someone wants to learn a knee cut, you and I are going to do it 2 totally different ways just because of body type and things like that. And they're never really going to understand the position 100% because they're focused on, well, the way Joe does it must be better, or the way JC does it must be better. No, it's just a knee cut.
So whenever I show something, if that was happening, right? So we take someone that's brand new, and I'm gonna teach you knee cut, you're gonna teach knee cut, right? Well, yeah, whoever is probably more similar than body wise is probably gonna do a little bit better with them, be a little bit closer to what they want to do, right? But I think that it's on us to at every step like, explain, and you can't explain every detail in such thorough depth, right? But like, okay, well, I'm gonna get here, and then I'm gonna cut this across, and I need this underhook because if I don't, he's gonna take my back. And if I stay here, and then I do this, and I do this, and this is why I do this part. And I think that, like, if you kind of explain it a little bit better, I think it kind of helps them understand the concepts of it a little bit better, and it makes them, we're not teaching them the move, we're teaching them several concepts that get, pay off to be that move.
And I think that, I agree with that, and I think that's one of the issues with online instruction, is that there's no
feedback.
There's no feedback. Yeah. That's the crucial thing, is there's no feedback. And then someone who's brand new doesn't know, okay, these are the ideas I should be concentrating on, and these are the ones that maybe aren't so important. Even when an online instructor prefaces a series of maneuvers or techniques or whatever with that advice, you still get lost because there's so much information coming in. People aren't categorizing it that quickly.
If you bought a DVD, it should take you one DVD. It should take you like probably 2 or 3 years to practice all the content, right? Because to me, it's like some of it's going to be maybe just your body type is not going to work, right? If I'm watching someone that's super flexible, I'm not super flexible. That's not going to be very good for me, right? There's probably still some things in there that's okay for me, but it's not going to be super useful. But like people always ask me like, how'd you get good at jiu-jitsu, right? And I said I would spend like 3 to 6 months drilling like the same couple techniques, and I would just try to force every time we rolled. And in the beginning, you can't force it as much; it's a little harder, right? You don't have as much control. Once you get a little bit better, once you're like blue belt level, you start forcing, you start funneling, and so every single roll goes to these couple positions. Like okay, so like I want to get good at back defense. Right, I got this way. I've been cutting over my hip over the leg and blocking this and like how do I do that? Well, it's easy. I keep giving up my back. I just keep giving up my back. I escape. Maybe I don't escape. Maybe I get tapped out. It doesn't matter though, right? Because we just start over. I get my back again. They get on my back again. I get another opportunity to kind of work on it. Same thing with sweeps. Same thing. I keep forcing this position and I sweep. I force this position, I sweep. I force this position. I try to sweep, but they stop me. Okay, I figure out, like, I kind of guess and check. But you need to spend a lot of time. You can't watch a DVD and practice it for 2 classes and think that you're good and go on to something else.
But the precursor to that is what you said, is which I think a lot of people miss out on, is you have a plan when you go into train.
Yes.
This is the thing I'm working on. I don't think enough people have a plan when they go into train. And I think that's where the line is drawn between exercise and training. Is the people who have a plan are training for a certain thing, and the people who are exercising don't necessarily have a plan for things.
Lloyd Irvin put out a long time ago the grappling game plan.
Yeah.
Right. Which was like, and he took it as like an approach to like people getting ready for competition. Okay. So it's like, you basically, like, the short version is basically you list every position and you would write what your first and second and third thing is going to be. Okay. I go to this, and if that doesn't work, I do this. And if that doesn't go work, I go to this. And then I cycle back to the first one and I just go through. Right. And it was like basically every position, you knew exactly what you're going to do. And because you had that game plan, you knew in all those positions, you had it on paper, what things you do, and you would make sure you practice and rep those, and you would basically schedule out, what days you're going to work on this, this, and this, what I mean? And it would work like that. And I think that kind of has to be applied to anyone, not even just competition, just anyone getting ready for, for training, whatever. It's like, okay, like, I need to find something, and like, maybe I could have 3 or 4 things I'm working on, just because maybe I'm not good enough initially to force the match. Like if I'm new, if I'm like, I've been training for 6 months or a year, I'm not good enough to funnel the match, my role wherever I want to be. Once I've been trained 10 years, of course, you can pretty much anyone you're gonna be able to funnel it. But before that happens, you got to have a couple of different options, and you kind of like you got to get those reps in. How many reps can you get in? That's the thing, I think, with any endeavor that you're learning, especially later in life. It's like, if you play a musical instrument, most people can't pick it up and jam right away. Just pick up a guitar and start playing a song? Yeah, they've got to play notes. They got to play scales, and they've got to break it down, and they've got to drill those, and they have to learn all that other stuff. And from those fundamentals come all of the other things after the fact. And the other thing that you mentioned was that you were always in the gym doing those things. So I think that attendance and hard work are necessary, but they're not sufficient. It's the attendance, the hard work, and then having a game plan on top of that. You have to be smart about what you're doing. I always talk about the lighthouse. I tell my guys, like, you need to have a lighthouse. What do you mean a lighthouse? I'm like, if I drop you out in the middle of the water in the dark, you have no idea where land is, you're just going to swim out in the middle of nowhere. You're going to go in circles and everything else. You need to find something that's going to be like a point of reference. You need to find that lighthouse, you need to swim for it. Even if it's really far away, it takes you a really long time, you will get to the lighthouse. If you can see the lighthouse, you will get to it. Right. But if you're just in the dark, you don't know if you're swimming towards land or swimming out into a deeper ocean. That's an awesome analogy. It's like an hour and a half or something like that. So we'll wrap it up here. Do you have any questions of me? Any advice I can offer to you? I got nothing. No. I mean, that's unfortunate. No, I mean, I think that, we were on the same page on just about everything. Yeah. I think that, we've got my prep belt under John Clark. That's right. That's right. I think my first class. And then I tore my ACL the next day. So, I mean, maybe. Oh, really? I think it was that night, actually. Yeah. I'm sure I wasn't there for that. I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, we're on the same page on pretty much everything. Like, we talk all the time. Cool, man. It was good to talk to you, and appreciate you taking the time. No problem. Good awesome. That's it for today. Big thanks to Joe for donating some of his time to us. He and I probably could have gotten more in depth on some of these issues and talked for hours, and I feel a little bit remiss for not debating fast food cheeseburger supremacy with Joe. Big shout out to Guido for working the 1s and 2s and actually for driving us down here today. Kid's really coming into his own. If you're in Raynham, Mass, and you want to try martial arts, stop by Lauzon MMA. Link is in the bio. But if you're in Boston, you might want to swing by Broadway Jiu-Jitsu. Don't forget to hit subscribe, do your push-ups, and drink your tequila. Until next time.